One silly season is slowly but surely coming to an end, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have some interesting pieces that are yet to fall in their own place. With Alpine, Sauber and VCARB being the teams that are watched the most, there seem to be very promising choices for each of these squads, and with all the options on the table, who ends up where for 2025, and who will be the most damaged side at the end of it. As of now, it's obvious that the seat to have drawn the most attention is the Alpine one, despite all of the struggles that the French-based squad have gone through in the past couple of months. But with an entire restructure of the team and with Briatore being back as a consultant in Alpine, it's safe to say that the market could become a lot more interesting for them if they are to take a couple of risks in the foreseeable future. Right now, the question is whether they get to choose a driver from their own academy, such as Jack Doohan, a driver with experience that drives for them in the WEC, Mick Schumacher, or opt for an amazingly shocking choice and bring back Nikita Mazepin due to the massive financial backing that he would bring with himself. As all things stand, it seems like the nod has been given to Jack Doohan, as the Aussie is more or less a secured pick because Alpine did make a mistake in the past when they invested too late in Piastri, and he decided not to join them even though they announced he would be the replacement of Alonso. Be that as it may, Alpine are now in a much tougher situation as they're looking to split up the working relationship with Renault's engines and become a customer team, which is something that would bring a massive financial burden on their shoulders. If this is to happen, then Alpine would definitely consider merging with companies that have strong financial backing. In this case, that would be High-Tech. This is the company that saw its boss, Oliver Oakes, being promoted as the team principal of Alpine, and now it's almost certain that he would overlook the process of Alpine and High-Tech merging their forces from 2025 onwards, something that has already begun as High-Tech has applied for registration in F1 after receiving a multi-million investment from the Kazakh mogul Vladimir Kin. But what is very interesting is that apart from Kin, there are other investors in High-Tech, such as Oakes himself, as well as Dmitry Mazepin, the father of Nikita, who is currently racing in the LMP2 class of the Asian Le Mans series, and has won 2 out of the first 3 races on the calendar. And as I mentioned above, if Alpine are determined to leave Renault as their engine supplier, then they would be looking at a company that would be willing to invest quite a bit of resources in them, as the $240 million investment out of the Hollywood stars didn't really seem to be paying off right now, something that they would have to answer in front of a whole investment group. A huge obstacle for Mazepin would definitely be the fact that he doesn't have a super license, but that wouldn't prevent him from reobtaining it in the foreseeable future, as early as possible. But will Alpine really go down this path and become the laughingstock of the sport? With 2 other strong choices like Doohan and Schumacher, it would be interesting to see whether Mazepin would slot in and be given a chance of redemption, as his highest career finish in the 21 races he started in 2021 was P14, and he was constantly slower than Mick Schumacher, his teammate at that time, by margins even greater than 2 or 3 seconds on average. All of this goes to show that Mazepin's place is not in the sport, but when money talks, we ought to listen. So it's up to Alpine to decide whether they will choose talent and performance, or whether they would opt for the rich and easy way of buying everything they can in order to keep the team alive as long as possible without having to stress about performance being the primary factor of their survival. On the other hand, teams like Sauber do have something that Alpine doesn't right now, and that is potential as well as uprise form. This is the team that will be taken over by Audi from 2026 onwards, and the moves that have been made by the German manufacturer are quite strong in terms of showing that they are here to compete, not to fight for scrap points. After appointing Binotto as the COO and CTO of the team, Audi has signed Jonathan Wheatley from Red Bull as their team principal, and even though many believed Bottas would be the driver to extend the contract with Audi from 2025 onwards and be part of the new team once the new regulations kick in, a strange and unexpected candidate has emerged from the shadows. We're talking about the current F2 driver Gabriel Bortoletto, who is having a very decent season in the F2 Championship right now and has put himself on the radar of Audi. With this, Audi is showing that they are likely focusing talent and youth for the second seat rather than experience, which they have brought with Hülkenberg as their primary driver. The first goal was clear, have a driver from their home country, and now the second one would likely be decided in the following period. There haven't been a lot of talks about the 17-year-old Bortoletto entering F1 anytime soon, especially because of the fact that he's a McLaren junior, and if there is a team that should promote him, that would be the Woking-based squad, something they do not intend on doing right now considering they have the youngest pair-up of drivers on the grid. But that doesn't mean Bortoletto won't be offered chances in other teams, such as Audi. Formula.Uno reports that the Brazilian driver is now in a very good position when it comes to becoming a Sauber driver from 2025 onwards, which would give him a full year to accommodate to F1 experience and become a stellar driver from 2026, when Audi is about to enter the sport with huge plans on their hands. Obviously, it would be very interesting to see yet another rookie being promoted in the sport, as it's now very likely that Antonelli will also sign the contract with Mercedes, and Doohan will be part of Alpine, which would make an astonishing 4 rookie drivers in a season, something we haven't witnessed in quite a while. However, Audi are yet to make a decision, and even though their latest actions are telling us a pattern in which they're targeting youth rather than experience, we should never forget the existence of Valtteri Bottas. This is the man who has never missed a Q3 appearance with Mercedes, and also the man who has won 10 races while being under the radar from Lewis Hamilton from 2016 to 2021. When it comes to race-winning experience and battling it up at the front, there isn't a better solution for Audi than Bottas. But to the F1 fans and the experts out there, it is quite strange as to why nobody offered a more stellar contract and more attention to the Finn now that he's shown what he's capable of doing. Sauber's downfall has also caught him as collateral damage, and while this is something that raises the eyebrows of the F1 community, it would be up to us to wait and see whether Audi would choose a driver like Bottas or Bortoletto for 2025, or even more interesting, Liam Lawson. While we are waiting to see how the entire situation in Audi will fall down, we must not forget that Red Bull decided to keep Perez from 2025 onwards, and with Marco's latest statement that nothing would change for 2025 and the cards will be reshuffled again next year, it's safe to assume that Lawson was played dirty by his team and now is forced to look for a seat elsewhere if he wants to become a full-time driver in 2025. There is a clause in Lawson's contract that allows him to pick team other than Red Bull and Racing Bulls if they fail to provide him with a full-time seat from 2025 onwards, and unlike all the other rookies, he has driven 5 races in 2023 and has shown what he's capable of, finishing P9 in Singapore in a race that he's driven on for the first time in his career in a car that was definitely the slowest one at that period. There are still a lot of question marks over who ends up where because of the complications that have caught Red Bull and their sister team Racing Bulls, but one thing is clear. We are going to follow every step of every driver, and unfortunately for 2 of the current grid drivers, Joe and Sargent, it seems like their F1 journey is over. But in an unforgiving sport like Formula 1, you cannot allow too many mistakes, and that is something that has already happened to these 2. So unfortunately for them, but fortunately for the other sides involved, we're going to see some shakeups for the upcoming season. With all this in mind, where do you think the remaining free agents would end up in 2025? Let us know in the comments below.